Hello and welcome to the Be Knowledge Share. In this episode, we talk about the last task within the strategy analysis chapter of the CBAP guide. So without further ado, let's get started. So in the last few chapters, we spoke about, episodes, we spoke about assessing risks. In this case, we're going to define the change strategy. The purpose behind defining change strategy is to develop and assess alternative approaches to the change and then select the recommended approach. So in terms of the change strategy, it clearly describes the nature of the change in terms of the context of the change, identified alternative change strategies, justification for why a particular change strategy is the best approach, investment and resources required to work towards the future state, how the enterprise will realize value after the solution is delivered, key stakeholders in the change and transition states along the way. Some of the elements are solution scope. The solution is the outcome of a change that allows an enterprise to satisfy a need. Multiple solution options might be evaluated, and as part of a change strategy, the best solution approach is justified and selected. The solution scope defines the boundaries of the solution and is described in enough detail to enable stakeholders to understand which new capabilities change will deliver. Gap analysis. A gap analysis identifies the difference between the current state and future state capabilities. To perform gap analysis, both current state and the future state should be defined. Using the same techniques to describe both the current and future states assists in gap analysis, as it simplifies the comparison. Gap analysis can help identify gaps that prevent the enterprise from meeting the needs and achieving goals. It can be used to determine if the enterprise can meet its needs using its existing structure, resources, capabilities, and technology. The third element is enterprise readiness. Assessment. Business analysts analyze the enterprise to assess its capacity to make the change and to sustain the change in the future state. The readiness assessment considers the enterprise's capacity not only to make the change, but to use and sustain the solution and realize value from the solution. The assessment also factors in cultural readiness of the stakeholders and operational readiness in making the change, the timeline from when the change is implemented to when the value can be realized, and the resources available to support the change effort. Change strategy. A change strategy is a high-level plan of key activities and events that will be used to transform the enterprise from the current state to the future state. Change strategies may be a singular initiative composed of smaller changes, which might be structured as a set or sequence of projects or as various continuous improvement efforts. Transition states and release planning, so that's the fifth element. In many cases, the future state will need to be achieved over time rather than through a single change, meaning that the enterprise will have to operate in one or more transition states. Release planning is concerned with determining which requirements to include in each release, phase, or iteration of the change. Business analysts help facilitate release planning discussions to help stakeholders reach decisions. There are many factors that guide these decisions, such as the overall budget, the deadlines or time constraints, decisions such as overall resource constraints, training schedules, and the ability of the business to absorb changes within a defined time frame. Some of the guidelines and tools used here are the business analysis approach, the design options, solution recommendations. Techniques used here are the balanced scorecard, which is used to define the metrics that will be used to evaluate the effectiveness of the change strategy, benchmarking and market analysis, brainstorming, business capability analysis, and there's many more. Some of the stakeholders are customers, domain subject matter experts, end users, implementation subject matter expert, operational support, project manager, regulator, sponsor, supplier, and tester. So let's look at this from Amanda's lens. Amanda has been hired to move as a business analyst, to move a brick and mortar pizza store to an online store. So in this specific role, let's see what she does. So So she would basically aim at defining a change strategy. She looks at the context of the change. She identifies alternative change strategies. So she's looking at ways. Okay, so this is our goal. That what she's defined her goal, or these are her goals that she's looking to solve for. But she also looks at what are our change strategies that we can look at. In this case, she could employ multiple change strategies. Right. Number one could be you move the store partially online in that you accept payments online, but you only place orders by customers calling in. That's option one. Option two could be completely move everything online. So you only have a, a, a back end kitchen to cook, but move your orders online. Don't even take customer calls. Everything's online. You have your payment system online, and then you have your delivery. Your delivery could very well be where the customers are provided the pizzas through within a specific radius for by dropping off the pizzas rather than having them come into the store. So those are the options that she would consider in her change strategy. She would look, in this case, the solution scope. She would look at the gap analysis. Okay, so now that we have our options laid out for each specific option, what are some of the gaps, right? So gaps could be very well be they don't have enough staff to take calls. So in this case, by moving stuff online, they would remove the need for hiring staff to take calls. That's the gap analysis that she would kind of work through. Enterprise readiness assessment. So she would, for each option, say, okay, is the enterprise ready to take this, to accommodate this change? In terms of readiness, maybe she would interview staff. She would interview the operations lead or manager. She would also interview senior executives to understand, are they ready, and what are, and through that process, she would also understand what the gaps are. She would craft a high-level plan of key activities and events that will be used to transform the enterprise from the current state to the future state. So she would craft the change strategy as part of this initiative. She would consider transition states and release planning. So within the change strategy, she lays out, okay, these are the specific requirements, but then she would divvy up those requirements into different chunks of releases. So maybe she builds out a roadmap and she says, okay, let's look at these set of requirements, maybe moving payment online only as part of release one. Okay, so that could be in quarter 1 and 2 of 2022, as an example. And then the next step would be to place the order forms online, and that would be the second release, could be in Q3, Q4. So those are the sorts of things that she would consider in her release planning. Some of the guidelines and tools here are the business analysis approach, the design options, the solution recommendations, and techniques used here are the balanced scorecard, benchmarking, and should use numerous techniques. In this case, the stakeholders here are customer, domain subject matter expert, the end user, implementation is me, the operational support, PM, regulator, sponsor, supplier, and tester. So this ends the chapter on strategy analysis, which is chapter 6 of the CBAP guide. I hope you've liked this channel and this episode. If you do find value, please do consider subscribing to this channel. We do have our website, baknowledgeshare.com, where we share tidbits and bits on different sort of articles related to business analysis. So feel free to subscribe to that channel, to that website rather. And until next time, see you then.